Longtime veteran Brian Boyle has finally signed an NHL contract while making his return to the league. The Toronto Maple Leafs and Montreal Canadiens are both in hot pursuit of an upcoming KHL free agent. Plus, we have some more additional rumors on the Edmonton Oilers and the Boston Bruins. We'll get into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news items to discuss here today. But first, I want to get started with the news that longtime NHL veteran Brian Boyle has signed a one-year contract with the Florida Panthers. Now, Brian Boyle is a player that seemed to be drawing a lot of interest around the NHL, and we had many reports really since the end of the preseason into the beginning of the NHL season that there was a lot of NHL teams, up to 4 or 5, that were showing interest in the veteran player to bring him onto the roster. But many had to either make different moves or shed salary or different things to make their necessary adjustments to get the signing completed. So there was, like I said, a variety of 4 to 5 teams involved, but the Florida Panthers are the team who he's ended up signing with here for the remainder of the NHL season, which will earn him approximately $974,000. Now, they made a roster spot by demoting young forward Henrik Borgstrom down to the American Hockey League affiliate here as well, and Brian Boyle is expected to be joining the team here in short order. So it'll be interesting to see if we see any other NHL veterans get signed. There's still a handful of guys with all kinds of NHL experience out there, like Thomas Vanek and Dion Phaneuf and others that, we've seen different reports over time that there was some interest, but as of right now, no signings, no contracts for some of these guys. So be interesting to see if any of them, more of them, get deals here as the season goes on. Now, in other news, the Toronto Maple Leafs and Montreal Canadiens are believed to be the frontrunners to land the services of a pending KHL free agent. Konstantin Akulov is a 24-year-old forward playing over in the KHL for CSKA. He's 6 foot tall, 185 pounds. He's had a pretty solid career over there so far, and he is believed to be interested in jumping over to the NHL for next season. Now, many NHL teams are interested in this guy's services, but according to Chris Johnston on Saturday Headlines on Hockey Night in Canada this past weekend here, he says that the Leafs and the Habs are believed to be the front runners, and many other teams are kind of shying away because they don't really feel that they really have much of an opportunity, that he's likely going to sign with either Toronto or Montreal. Now, over the last 2+ seasons, he's played 100 games in the KHL, putting up 63 points, and he's also had a very impressive playoff run, putting up 14 points in 19 games last year as well with CSKA. So he's certainly had a pretty solid career over there, considering it's not as a high-scoring league as the NHL. He's put up some pretty solid numbers. He's still relatively young, and he certainly will be a hot commodity, like I said, come next year or next offseason when he's eligible to sign with an NHL club. Now, we've seen the Maple Leafs have a fair bit of a variety of success here with our KHL players coming over the last little while. Some have worked out and some haven't, but overall, generally speaking, they've had more success than not. Montreal's had previous success with Russian players as well, although it's been a little while since they've had a signing in that regard. So we'll be interested to see where he ends up signing, but he's certainly one of the top free agents outside of the NHL to keep your eye on for the upcoming season. Now, sticking with the Toronto Maple Leafs here, as well as we discussed yesterday from Saturday Headlines, of course, they're going to have a lot of tough decisions coming up here in approximately the next 10 days or so as they get ready to activate defenseman Travis Dermott and forward Zach Hyman from long-term injury reserve. They won't be eligible for that until at least October the 26th, because in part of the LTIR, you have to be on that for 24 days in order to qualify for that LTIR for the team to get the cap relief. So obviously, that's the date that we're looking at, and they're aiming to return. Now, Travis Dermott seems ready. Hyman likely will be ready right around that time as well. Now, as we mentioned, Nick Petan and Kevin Gravel have already cleared waivers, so it certainly would be easy to send them down to the minors in order to clear some cap space, but they're going to have to make some other moves as well. They're likely going to need around just over $3 million in cap space. So some other guys like Martin Marinson, Justin Hall, maybe Justin Spezza, Timashov, Nick Shore. Some of these other guys playing bottom pair minutes on the defense or in the bottom 6 forwards are likely going to potentially have to either be waived, sent to the minors, or maybe even traded. Now, it was also noted on this segment during Hockey Night in Canada that Elliot Friedman mentioned that the Leafs have let other teams know that they would trade Nick Petan if another team wants to take him on and give him more of an opportunity than he's getting with the Maple Leafs. So obviously, if they were to trade him, that would certainly help a little bit. But as we've said here, Petan as well as Gravel can go down to the minors without having to clear waivers again, and is going to have to create some other additional moves. So we likely will see a trade out of the Maple Leafs sometime in the next week to a week and a half. It's hard to say exactly who. They're going to have a lot of tough decisions to make here with these guys ready to come back from long-term long-term injury reserve. Now, of course, we also saw that John Tavares is out with a broken finger for a few weeks, and in the last game against the Bruins this weekend, it looks as though Andreas Janssen might be out for a period of time as well. He did appear to have a leg injury in that game, so I guess we'll have to wait and see the outcome of that. So the Maple Leafs are battling some injuries now. They're up against the cap. They have some guys ready to come back, and they just don't have the space. So it certainly will be interesting to see how they handle all of their roster moves in the next week to 10 days, but it's very likely somebody from the Leafs is getting traded. So, of course, like I mentioned yesterday, I want to know what your thoughts are. Do you think Nick Petan gets traded? Obviously, he's already cleared waivers, so it'd be easy for another NHL club to take him on and even assign him to their American Hockey League affiliate if they want him to start down there as well. But it's going to take about $3 million worth of space, providing some other type of move to make these guys be able to have space on the roster to make their return. So how do they make the space? Who goes and who stays for the Maple Leafs? Now, NBC Sports' Joe Haggerty, covering the Boston Bruins, had some interesting thoughts on the Bruins' potential moves that they might be looking to make coming up here. Obviously, the Bruins have had a pretty decent start to their NHL season, so they're certainly not under any big pressure to make any big-time moves. But one thing that we can safely say about the Boston Bruins right now, that if it wasn't for their top line, that we should call the perfection line of Bergeron, Pasternak, and Marchand, they really would be in big trouble. Those guys have been scoring at a really solid rate like they usually always do, but their secondary scoring has been pretty scarce and almost non-existent in some games, and that's certainly leading to cause a concern for many Bruins fans and coaching staff. We've heard comments from Bruce Cassidy on a couple of occasions indicating that if the top line didn't come through the way they did, that they would have likely lost the game. So they're certainly looking to boost their depth moving forward deeper into the season. With the start being pretty solid and obviously getting a lot of W's, that's certainly helping keep the pressure off. But obviously, like I said, there's a longer term, if things don't change, it certainly would be a major cause for concern. So apparently, one area that the Haggerty feels the team could certainly benefit to boost some depth would be in the right wing position. So he's wondering if they should take a look at young players like Josh Hosang and Jesse Puljujarvi. Now, both of these players have been getting a lot more interest lately. There's been numerous reports about different teams kind of kicking tires on them, including the Carolina Hurricanes as well as the Pittsburgh Penguins. But again, both of those teams have had a decent amount of success so far as well, like the Bruins. So they're not really under any kind of serious pressure to make a move, but are certainly inquiring and are interested to some degree on these guys. Now, of course, I'm not really sure Josh Hosang, for example, would really add a ton of depth for the Bruins. I think they have some other younger players within their system who would probably be able to step up and be just as valuable. On the other hand, though, Jesse Puljujarvi is playing pretty well over in Finland. Now, of course, with him, he won't be able to return to the NHL if he's not signed to a contract by December the 1st. So that one's just a little bit more time sensitive as far as when he gets traded, when his season in the NHL would kind of be considered lost and gone for the year. Because like I said, like we saw last year with William Nylander, if you're not signed by December 1st, you're not eligible to play during the current season, and right now he doesn't have a contract. He's holding out the Oilers, waiting for a trade, and we'll see what happens. So Puljujarvi, I think, very well could be a help to the Boston Bruins, but at the same time, what's the asking price going to be, and can they give the Oilers what they're looking for? It's certainly debatable. Not really sure that the Bruins are going to want to give up too much in regards to future assets to obtain a player who's kind of considered a little bit of a project at this point. And the Bruins do need some depth on the wings. They could certainly use some more secondary scoring. But based on Haggerty's report here, I guess these are some fairly cheap acquisitions they could look to make, but I'm not really sure that would be the answer. I think they could probably go about things maybe a little bit differently here. But once again, with the Bruins, if they can't get some secondary scoring, they might have to turn to the trade market, and these are a couple of the familiar faces that are certainly well known to be available out there on the market. Now, as I mentioned, the Edmonton Oilers are another team I want to quickly discuss here today as well. There is some talk that they would like to get defenseman Darnell Nurse to a contract extension before too long. Now, he had signed a short-term contract coming out of his entry-level deal, signed a 2-year contract. He's into year 2, and he's got off to a phenomenal start. Of course, the Oilers are a very surprising team this year so far. Got off to a really hot start so far. He's been playing a lot with Ethan Bear. They've been a great duo back there on the blue line, and Nurse is certainly putting up the offensive points as well, with 7 points in 8 games to start his season. And as we've seen with many other teams trying to get ahead of the RFAs for next offseason and get them signed to longer-term deals, it is likely likely expected here that the Oilers and Nurse would like to hammer out a longer-term extension. At least from the Oilers' perspective, I think it would probably be wise. He's certainly trending in an upward trajectory with his play, his offensive production, overall game here. So the longer this goes on, the more it's going to benefit Nurse, and the more he's likely going to be able to demand on a new salary. So if they can get ahead of this and get him into a longer-term extension of some kind, hard to say exactly how many years they look at, but either way, to get him signed would be huge for the team. I think he's proving to be quite a defenseman for them and could very well be, a big cornerstone for them to build around for the future. Now, as this hot start will the Oilers, will it continue? It certainly looks like it could. They've got a lot of good things going for them right now, so we'll see as the season goes. But it is expected that the Oilers, sometime sooner than later, would like to lock up Nurse before the season gets too far into it here. So that is all your latest updates here for today. So of course, as always, want to know your thoughts, your opinions on all the items discussed today. What moves will we see the Maple Leafs make? Will the Bruins go shopping on the market for a winger to boost their secondary scoring? Let me know what you think, and we'll continue the conversation down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.